Barb, welcome to the first videoed interview for the Inspired Creative. I'm really excited to have you here because this is really about inspiring creativity in the world. And I want to introduce Barb Safranek to those of you who are listening to this. She is not only is she a friend, but she is an incredible fashion designer making these really unique clothes. And she's also a landscape architect, and she's just a human extraordinaire. And she lives right here in Spokane, Washington, where I live. So Barb, I'd love to just have you kind of introduce how you got into making these incredible clothes that are really art pieces. Like, that's how I see your work. It's living, walking art when people wear your clothes.
Thank you, Diane. That is a very generous introduction. That's very sweet. I have to say that it was kind of just something I stumbled on, this love affair with this fabric. I had been laid up with a couple of broken wrists. I had seen this fabric before in ready-made clothes. The fabric I'm talking about is what you're seeing in the shirt I'm wearing. It's called Dutch Wax Prints. It's a cotton fabric that's printed in a specific way, and I'll talk more about that later. But I had really gotten this bee in my bonnet about Dutch wax prints, and I was looking everywhere for clothing made out of it, couldn't find it, and I decided, well, now is the time for me to think about doing something close to home. I couldn't drive for 6 weeks. It was the beginning of the cold season here in Spokane, and so I went online and I was able to find the fabric. I couldn't find Dutch wax prints in fabric stores. I couldn't find ready-made clothing, but I found some online. And the first fabric I bought, I deliberated for hours about it because it was really a very large, bold, colorful print. That is not what is in style right now, and it hasn't been for a long time. People tend to gravitate towards very neutral colors and not things that would call attention to themselves. But I love the print. It was kind of a pod vine print, botanical print. And I bit the bullet and I went ahead and ordered it. I chose a very tailored coat pattern to make the pattern up in. I wanted the print to full length of the picture on the print to show. And so I went for it and I loved it. And I still love it. But I'd have to say the first few times I wore it, it took a certain kind of courage to put it on and go out with it. It was not the sort of thing you just throw on without thinking. And the reason being is that people would always talk to me when I wore this coat. They would always comment on it. Either, oh, I like your coat, or where did you get that fabric, or wow, or there was something about that the coat that was so different and striking that people wanted to have a conversation with me. So that's how I got started.
Yeah, and as your friend, you've told me about how, as an introvert, wearing your own clothes has kind of been this transformational process. And I'd love to hear about that. I think other people would be interested in, like, how can clothes that are bold and have a statement transform how we feel about ourselves? Like, what's been your process around that?
Sometimes it has to be something you work up to. If you're an introvert, it's not really an easy thing to do, but it's gotten easier, and I have found that it is so incredibly rewarding to start conversations with people I don't know. And the clothes help me do that. The clothes are not just bold and wild, they're what I think is beautiful too, and they have a story to them. And so it gives me a jumping off point with meeting new people. And I think that it gives other people too kind of a jumping off point. It's like, how do you start a conversation with somebody you don't know, especially when you're an introvert? It's a process that it takes a little push, and I find that my clothes give me that little push.
Wow, that's a really great way to say it. It's a conversation starter. And I just have to say to those of you listening, like I've been out with Barb and I actually own some of her clothes. And every time we're out wearing her clothes, inevitably people do, they stop and talk, where did you get that? Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. So I can see how that happens. Well, can you tell us too, I know that your mom had an influence in your just learning to sew and showing, like inspiring you as a young person to even know how to do that. I wonder if you could talk about that, because you've named your brand after her. So, tell us a little bit about that.
That's right. My mother is the namesake for my brand, which is Francy King. Frances Helen Johnson King was my mother. She was a very clever woman. She was a breadwinner. She was a registered nurse. She was an incredible homemaker. She baked and cooked everything from scratch. She was the wife of a minister, which has its demands. She was a mother of two, and just an extremely talented seamstress. She made all her own clothing. She was a meticulous seamstress. She did not sew with Dutch wax prints, but she sewed beautifully and made beautiful clothes. I still have a few things that she made because they're just so gorgeously put together. She learned to sew from her mother, and I remember once when I was visiting my grandmother. She grew up on a farm. My grandmother and grandfather lived on a farm in the Skokomish Valley. My grandmother told me that she felt so privileged to have been able to sew clothing for her 7 children. And I think what she meant is that she felt privileged that she had the time and the resources to do that. And so I think that my mother inherited that love of making things and passed that on to me. And also, I think it's a kind of a love of beauty, of making things and of beautiful things.
So did she teach you? You learned to sew really young.
She taught me some of the basics. I was always a kind of opinionated child, and I really cared about my clothes and how they looked. And I got to the point probably when I was 8 or 10. I don't remember exactly when she just said, "Here, I think you need to make your own things," because I was just too picky. So
Wow.
she started me out. She let me use her sewing machine, and then it was back in the day, and in middle school, in school, home economics. I don't know if anybody still has that in school anymore, but I learned sewing in school as well.
Okay. Okay. So, it's nice to hear this, because I think the skill to learn it when you're young is different than when you learn it as an adult. Like there's a facility and a comfort of knowing it since being a young person.
There's a lot to know, really. I taught a sewing class at one of the elementary schools this year, just a 3-part sewing class
Oh,
in an
wow.
after-school program. And we had 3rd graders, and it had to be one-on-one because we're working with sewing machines and irons. But just how to operate the machine, how to turn it on, how to guide the fabric through, how to back stitch, and how to cut the thread. You know, there are just so many little skills that are involved in learning how to sew that I realized from trying to teach somebody that, wow, you don't just jump in and make something. You start with very simple things.
Basic. Yeah, I
Yeah.
have to say, when I was a kid, I learned to sew too, and I really liked it. I learned to sew and I learned photography. I was like 9 in this summer camp. Just a slight tangent. And so when my parents asked me what I wanted for Christmas, I said a dark room or a sewing machine.
I bet I know what you got.
But I'm darker, so I got a sewing machine.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so listen, one of the things, and I want to tell this to all of you who are watching, one of the things that's so magical about what Barb does in her designs is she doesn't just use the wax print, which is amazing in and of itself, but she combines it with wools and reused, upcycled clothes that she finds and puts it together. So it's like a combination of Western wear with the batik. So what I thought, Barb, is maybe because I got out my piece that I thought maybe we could show to people and you could talk us through like, how do you even figure out how to do it? Because truly it's remarkable. Like I am always, and you know, I'm an artist, but I am always blown away at how you figure out which fabrics to put together. And there's like usually 3 or 4 different fabrics that go together in these clothes that really harmonize in a very unique way. And in that way, like all of your pieces are one-offs.
They are. Yeah. Let's do it. Let's do it. Bring out your coat.
All right, let me move my chair. Hang on. I thought I would start by holding it up because what I noticed is there's this beautiful gray, I don't know if people can see this. It's a gray wool, like a pant on the inside, right? And then the back, but I'm going to put it on so that you can see it on. This is a cape. Look at that. Is this your design? Like you designed this?
This is my design. I am not a pattern maker. So what I do is I take commercial patterns and I take a piece from this pattern, a piece from that pattern and put them together. Mm-hmm. So this is kind of like a vest with a cape attached to it. And it's versatile because it has some warmth to it. Mm-hmm. And it's really easy to put over things.
Yeah, so here's my own sleeves, you know, and it's got, but I love this piece. I feel like I'm in my sort of magic superwoman cape. But tell us about these different, I'm going to just show the fabric here.
Yeah. Why don't you turn around and I'll talk about the print first.
Yeah.
So this is a really basic, simple African print. Dutch wax print, African print, Ankara, these are all terms for the same thing. This is just big circles, and the circles have a lot of red in them. The background is actually kind of a plum color and a white. Lots of little detail squiggles in the background there. So it's a beautiful pattern. Even though it's simple, there's a lot of detail in it, a lot of texture. Mm-hmm. And I combined that print with, on the very front of Diane's coat, you can see there's a lot of red. There are actually 2 fabrics there. In the chest area is a fabric that has a little bit of sheen. It's a stretch taffeta. I use that fabric a lot when I'm you know, trying to get pants or things that need to stretch a little bit. In this case, I used that taffeta really just because I wanted that sheen. And the other red fabric is a beautiful wool from a woman's skirt that I found at a thrift shop.
In the collar.
Yeah, that's on the collar. And then on the sides and on the yoke on the back is another thrifted fabric that is a kind of a plum colored pinwheel corduroy, again from a pair of pants.
I'm just going to turn that up a little bit. Yes, right here.
Yes. And the belt in the back is made out of that pinwheel plum corduroy. And then you can see when Diane moves her arms, there's a lining that's a red satin that makes the garment move really nicely. It's easy to get on and off. It gives the cottons, which are quite lightweight, some body and some warmth. And then to really give a garment warmth, I add the very lightweight men's wool that is from a thrifted pair of men's dress pants.
And that so is,
yeah, that's down the back where you can use a little extra warmth in a jacket.
I just love this. I just love this. And, you know, I'm not an introvert. I mean, I'm sort of introvert extrovert. I'm on this, but I will say, you know, if I were in an introverted mood, I probably wouldn't wear it because it's not only is it bold, it's red.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, I'm going to get my chair. Thank
All
you
right.
for walking us through. So I'm going to keep it on now.
Nice.
So is this generally your process, Barb? Do you start with the patterned material and then find the wool pants or the, you know, the things that you find in the thrift shops?
I do. The patterned fabric is something I'm buying new. It's yardage. I buy it in 6-yard lots. So I have a good amount of that. The first thing I start with is just what you said, is the print.
Mm-hmm.
I get a good amount of fabric, and I can make almost any coat with 6 yards of fabric.
Mm-hmm.
But the smaller pieces are the ones I have to really think about where I'm going to use them. Mm-hmm. So I might start with a print. I've got one here that I pulled out to show you. This one is like wild and crazy color.
Ow. Really
bright color, kind of candy color. And I almost think, wow, I'm not sure about those colors. There's no subtlety here. There's no subtlety. So what am I going to put with this fabric to give it a little sophistication?
Yeah.
So
really bright.
Yeah. So the most obvious thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take a pair of beautiful men's dress slacks in black and add that.
Yeah.
And that's going to bring the bright, clear colors and ground them a little bit. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And all men's pants are either in black, navy, brown, gray, or some kind of a, you know, tan, really. There's nothing that's really colorful in men's pants. So the nice, beautiful wools actually, I think, ground some of the prints quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And then just to add a little bit of acknowledgement of the color in this print, I think I might add, you know, maybe a little bit of bright pink.
Wow.
Maybe a little bit of lavender.
Wow.
And then I'm starting to get some color combinations that are appealing to me.
Wow. So I know you've used the word audition. That's what I've heard you say, that you audition the fabrics together, just like your
yes.
Yeah. And
that's a term borrowed. That's a term borrowed from quilters. Quilters audition fabrics to figure out how they're going to combine them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because in essence, you are kind of piecing together these clothes. Yeah.
That's true. That's a good point.
Wow. And I mean, do you ever have one that you're just like, oh no, I cut everything and I put it together and I don't like it?
I do. You know, I have a lot of things that I get it all cut out. I may have it half sewed. I've draped it on myself or on my mannequin, and I think, wow, I am not sure about this. And it isn't until I have the whole garment assembled that I can really assess. So,
yeah, because I think it's not like you can paint over it.
That's right.
It feels like a very tricky kind of medium, like unforgiving in the sense that you've made these decisions and you've put in the time to put it together. So how many, I mean, just for fun to know, like, are there garments where you're like, wow, that just totally didn't work out?
There are.
Oh, there are.
There are garments that didn't work out where I didn't like the print as much as I thought I would, or the style just doesn't really work. It doesn't drape properly.
Mhm.
I think anybody that's tried to sew clothes knows how difficult it is to get something that fits right, that drapes right. You've got to really have, I think, experience.
Mm.
It's like any kind of design. You need to have experience working with your materials to kind of say, yeah, I know this fabric is going to work right here. It's going to have the proper weight to go with this other fabric. It's going to be the right drape. It's going to be the right color. It's not going to wear too much in that position. Like I use a lot of lace overlays in my designs, and I always make sure I put them on the outside of the sleeve. Sometimes I put them on the front, but I never put them under the arm because there's too much abrasion there. So there are
Yeah,
a lot of practical
a lot of
factors.
little details. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because to the person who doesn't work in this medium, I mean, it feels very unforgiving. And then there's so many factors, right? There's not just color and you know the weight of the material, how it flows, how it moves, the abrasion. And then you're also working with live people who wear your clothes. So
Yeah, that's another whole arena of what looks good on what type of figure. And I have to say that I really learned a lot from my first art fair last fall at the Little Spokane River Artist Studio Tour, because I had lots of people coming through trying on lots of things I'd made, and I could say, oh, this really works good on a short person. I think you sold a jacket to a very short woman who just looks spectacular in that coat. And you you nailed it, Diane, when you put her in that coat.
I
But
just have to say, I was wearing the coat. I'm just telling all of you. I was wearing the coat. I was a little in love with the coat. I thought I might even get this coat. And then this woman came along. She's like, "Oh, I love that coat." And I'm like, "Okay," because I was there to help Barb. I'm like, "Well, you should try it on." And then she tried it on. She's like, "Oh, I just love it." And I'm like, "Well, it
yeah,
does look fabulous on you."
uh,
Yeah, isn't it funny?
it
Different
is fun.
sizes, different clothes really work on different size people.
Yeah, and I just want to say on that line, I've really focused on clothes in smaller sizes because that's my size and that's the kind of figure I have experienced dressing. And sometimes I will get requests from large women asking about why don't I make their size? And it's not because I don't like large women. It's just because it's really another kind of figure to fit. I'm working with very bold prints, and you can't just throw them into a garment any which way. You really need to take into consideration proportion and size. So I'm gradually working my way up a little garments made in those sizes. But I'm hoping at the next show to really get some more feedback about whether I've chosen good styles for women in those sizes.
So tell us a little bit about, how do people find you? Where do you show your things? How do we get to you?
You know, I really, because of COVID, I think primarily, I haven't had a lot of opportunity to sell my thing. And I found that because everything I make is a one-off,
Mhm.
it's one of a kind, because I'm using thrifted fabrics, I can't make the same thing in 5 sizes.
Mhm.
So everything is unique and it has to appeal to a person. Probably the first thing would be color or print. And secondly, it's got to be a style that suits them. And thirdly, it's got to be a size that fits them. So it's really an in-person experience. I think people can't really order my clothes online, and they need to try them on.
Mhm.
And I am getting ready this very moment to go to my next art fair, and this one is in Bellevue, the Seattle area, the Bellevue Arts Fair.
Right.
I'm very excited. It's a big fair. There are lots of vendors there, and I anticipate there'll be lots of customers too. So I'm hoping that it will be successful in selling, but I'm also really hoping to get a lot of feedback and information about my clothes from this sale.
That's awesome. Like that is awesome. And don't you have a show coming up in October in Coeur d'Alene?
Yes, I'm going to be showing at the Arts Gallery in Coeur d'Alene. I have the month of October to show in one of their rooms upstairs, and we're going to kick it off with a fashion show. And I'm planning to have 15 pieces, all, of course, one of a kind, and they will be modeled at the fashion show. We're going to pair up with the Northwest Opera organization.
Wow.
And I think it's going to be a really fun time.
That is going to be fabulous. That's going to be fabulous. So, Barb, I want to ask you a couple more questions. So one is, is there anything else you want to share with me and with people who are listening, about your process, or, anything that you feel like you'd like us to know?
Well, I really love doing this, and I love the creativity of each piece. And I just want people to know that I think of it more as art than fashion. I mean, fashion certainly is an aspect. It's going to go on your body. It needs to be functional. It needs to work in the world. It has to be, considerate of where you're going and context. In that way, there's a very practical side to it. But really, it's not a mass marketing in any way. It's really about creating one very unique piece that nobody else will wear. So I want people to understand that. I have kind of considered the idea of doing commissions, and I have done a few, but I really prefer the flexibility of creating something, and having full control over deciding what fabrics go into it. Mm-hmm. If somebody comes to me with a size that is, outside of the strips of fabric I have that I thrifted, then I have to, buy new fabric instead of being able to use the thrifted fabric. So I'm not really sure where that's going to go, but I think that for now, I just want to create one of a kind art pieces.
Yeah, nice. So really it's wearable art, right?
Yes.
Wearable art. Yeah. Okay. Well, here's one last question. I'm wondering if you have a few things on hangers that you might want to just show us a few things as we close out. So, and even what you're wearing, like I know that's something.
Well, yeah, let me see if I can get my camera situated so that you can see this if I stand up.
Yeah.
This is just a little peplum top, which is perfect for warm weather like we're having here in July in Spokane. It's got
all the way around for us.
Skirt.
Wow.
And in this, I combine two prints. In the side pieces, there is one print that's a botanical print, and in the front and the skirt, it's a geometrical print. And there's a little bright lining on the other side of the peplum so that it is kind of a fun little piece to go dancing in.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And I used the same fabric that's on the side of this to make a more structured blazer. And this is a piece where I actually combined a men's wool in the collar. Let's see if I can show that up close. And on the sides and on the underarm, so that I like two-piece sleeves. I think they're interesting and slimming. And then on the front of the jacket, I put a lace overlay that has big openings so that you can see the Dutch wax print underneath come through.
Wow.
Love using laces that have those peekaboos in them so that you get a completely different effect. It adds dimension, it adds a little sparkle. Most of the laces, like This one have a little sparkle to them. So this jacket ties. It's a little bit of a wrap jacket, but it's essentially kind of a blazer style, a tailored style. And I lean towards tailored styles. I really like them.
Yeah.
I've got the
Oh
price
my gosh.
tag on there, ready to go for the Bellevue show.
Fabulous. Oh my God.
Thank you.
It's
Thank
so fabulous.
And something that I love doing and the Dutch wax prints allow me to do, I'm going to show you when I turn around, is to mirror match the prints.
Oh, oh, yes, I see what you're saying. Same image, both sides. Yes.
Yeah, the only way you can do a mirror match is if you have the print on both sides of the fabric.
Oh,
You have to be able to use the back side of the fabric. And most Dutch wax prints are dyed rather than printed. And so the ink goes all the way through. So you get the reverse image on the back side of the fabric.
and Dutch wax prints come, I mean, it says Dutch wax, but it seems like they're African prints.
Yeah, well, it has a long and multicultural history, but Dutch wax prints were a mechanized version of batiks that were invented. A machine was invented by the Dutch in the early 1800s. And their goal originally was to mass produce batik fabrics that were being handmade in Indonesia.
Okay.
And their plans morphed quite a bit. The Indonesians didn't really care for the mechanized prints, and they started exporting them to West Africa, where they just took off. The Africans now consider these African prints, even though they are manufactured in the Netherlands. They're manufactured in other places now as well, but really that's where they started. And they started with a company called Vlisco, VLISCO, which is kind of considered the top of the line of Dutch wax prints. And it's the only company in the EU that manufactures Dutch wax prints, and they are virtually unknown in Europe. They are almost entirely exported to Africa.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
So,
Well, you know, speaking of the cultural, one of the things I love about your work, your art pieces, is that you're blending cultures through fabric and through the design work. And it's a really beautiful bringing together, particularly in this time that we're living, you know, where in some ways we're becoming more global and one in some ways.
yeah. It's taking, you know, things from a bygone era in the thrifting materials I gather, and bringing them together with things that are from another continent, and then throwing a little lace in there. I mean, I'm really taking liberties, and I realize that I don't feel that I'm disrespecting any culture by doing this. And I do really love how much I am learning, because in Africa, many of the prints have cultural meanings. They're really iconic in their world. And so a print is not just a beautiful fabric, but it's something that sends a message to the people around you. So that is fascinating.
Yeah, has a story.
Right.
And in many ways, each piece has a story as you put it together, you know,
absolutely,
with parts and with your mom in there. And yeah, it's really beautiful. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, you know, for the conversation. And like, is there anything else you want to show us? Just saying.
You know, I don't have anything on hand, but I'm going to show you a few more prints, because I know that you're curious probably about what these prints are like.
Yeah.
And I have been making covered notebooks to kind of showcase the prints and have some little inexpensive things to sell. Oh, nice. So this is one example of a print. And that's all one piece of fabric. So it really has a lot of different color and design in it. That's a geometric. Here's a circle, another geometric.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very
Beautiful
bold and
colors.
strong.
And here is one with a metallic in it. I don't know, can you see that in the photograph? There is a gold overlay on the cotton that gives it a metallic sheen.
Yeah, it's
And
hard.
that's another
Yeah.
print. Okay, if I turn it kind of to the side, you can see more of that. Let me grab a couple of others here. This is a print I love. I bet you like that
Oh,
too.
yeah.
It's red.
Love that. Love
And that is a huge, very bold print.
it.
This is the one I'm wearing.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
I think that this is a tobacco flower.
Huh. Wow.
This is a little bit of a ginkgo leaf.
Oh my gosh, these are gorgeous. They're
And then this is kind of a fun one with a little bit of gold on it too.
oh, wow.
And you just get an idea of the variety. The company I was talking about in the Netherlands, Blisco, over the last 200 years has 350,000 unique prints that their designers have created.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, it's remarkable. I just have to say to everybody watching this, if you've gotten this far, you know, every time I see Barb, she's got some new fabulous thing on, and I'm like, oh, I want one of those too. Like you really are, you know, I just have to say, as an artist and a friend and someone who loves beauty, like I love beauty and I love clothes, you really are amazing in the magical, I think of it as very magical creations of these pieces of wearable art. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Diane, for that compliment. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to share some of my process with
Yes.
you and others.
Thank you. Listen, thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's so interesting to hear. And, you know, I think those of us who are, you know, work in the creative world, we all have our process, but then also to people who don't do as much creative stuff, I always think it's fascinating to know something about the, you know, the inside workings of how people do their thing, you know? So
Mhm,
thank
mhm.
you. Thank you. And
Well,
listen,
thank you too.
great luck to you on this upcoming show. And
Thank you very much.
I'll be there in October in Coeur
Uh,
d'Alene at the Arts
yes,
Gallery.
yes. Come see Diane modeling.
I can't wait. I'm like, oh, what am I gonna wear? I usually end up buying what I All right,
All
my
right.
dear. Well, thank you. Yeah.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.